In Wild Card Weekend, the Miami Dolphins were bounced by the Kansas City Chiefs, only scored 7 points, and that is the least of their problems heading into this offseason. The biggest question that the Miami Dolphins have to answer is, are they going to re-sign Tua Tagovailoa to a massive contract extension? Now you look at the quarterbacks in the 2020 class: Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. All of those first-round quarterbacks that are having big-time success got major contract extensions. Tua is currently the only quarterback that has yet to receive a massive contract extension. Now, as you know, the Dolphins just lost in the first round in a very disappointing fashion to the Kansas City Chiefs. It almost seemed like they didn't even want to be out there, and they were demoralized for their third straight loss. Now, in Week 17, they potentially had a chance to grab the #1 overall seed in the AFC. They traveled on the road to Baltimore, a team that had just finished up beating down on the 49ers. An absolutely massive game for both of these teams, because whoever wins really took a big step towards getting that #1 overall seed in the AFC. Now, the Dolphins got absolutely killed. Baltimore embarrassed them 56-19, but Miami didn't have time to sulk. They had to pick themselves back up, go play an extremely hot Buffalo Bills team at home for the AFC East Division title. Now, Miami, if they win this game, they'd be completely fine. They'd still be the #2 overall seed. They'd have a home playoff game, and Buffalo would have fallen to the wild card. Now, Buffalo pulled off a very late comeback in the fourth quarter, defeating them 21-14, and now the Dolphins had to pick themselves back up after two critical losses, and they fell all the way to the 6th seed, and then they had to go on the road at Kansas City in freezing temperatures, the fourth coldest playoff game in NFL history, and it really seemed like they didn't want to be out there. They had no juice. Their only touchdown of the game came off an incredible play by Tyreek Hill, coming back to the ball and going and scoring a touchdown. But this offense that was arguably the best in the NFL was nowhere to be found. In the regular season, they had the most yards per game. They had the most passing yards per game. They had the second most points per game. They were top 10 in rushing yards per game. I mean, this team could do it all. But if you look back at their schedule, Miami was elite at beating very bad teams, and they beat down on them. They dropped 70 points on the Broncos earlier in the year. They put up 45 points against Washington, and it seemed like these throwaway games really padded their stats. Now, looking back at their schedule now that the season's finished, when Miami played a team that was 500 or above, they went 1-6 on the year. Looking back at their first one against Buffalo on the road, they got killed 48-20. Then they went on the road at Philadelphia 31-17. They played Kansas City overseas. They lost 21-14. Their offense was nowhere to be found. And then they went on this 3-game losing streak of Baltimore, Buffalo, and then Kansas City. Now, obviously, the NFL is a very quarterback-driven league. You're not going to make it to the Super Bowl 9 out of 10 times if your quarterback is not one of the best at the position. Just looking at last year, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes both had top 5 seasons at the quarterback position. But I think Miami's asking themselves a major question right now. Will Tua be the guy that can lead us to a Super Bowl? The Dolphins are currently projected to be $40 million over the cap limit, and they're also going to have some big-time decisions to make on the defensive side of the ball with guys like Xavier Howard or potentially Bradley Chubb. Now, the Dolphins general manager Chris Grier did say that the Dolphins' long-term plan is to keep Tua as their quarterback. The predicted extension for Tua is most likely going to be around $40 million per season. And I remember when people used to have the conversation of if Herbert or Tua was a better quarterback. And by no means am I saying that Tua is a bad quarterback, but if you put Justin Herbert into the situation of Miami, I can't even imagine how good this team would be. Mike McDaniel is one of the best head coaches in the NFL. His offensive scheme is unbelievable, and I believe most quarterbacks would thrive in this system. Then they go out and get Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. The run game is one of the best in the NFL. Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. They have unbelievable talent everywhere, but when they lose these big games, it's easy to point the finger at the quarterback. First Things First came out with a great stat after this loss from Tua and the Dolphins, going back all the way to Week 17 in 2020, looking at every big game or meaningful game that Tua Tagovailoa has been in. Now you look at 2020. To make the playoffs against Buffalo, they lost 56-26, and he had a passer rating of 62.5. Now we'll take it a year later in Week 17 in 2021 to keep their playoff hopes alive against Tennessee on the road. They lost 34-3. Tua had a passer rating of 53.1. 2 years later in week 17 to potentially be the number 1 seed against Baltimore, like I was talking about earlier. They lost 56-19. Tua had a passer rating of 71.9. Take it 1 week later against Buffalo for the AFC East Championship. They were at home, lost 24-14. Tua had a passer rating of 62.7. Saturday night in the playoffs at Kansas City in freezing temperatures, they lost 26-7. Tua with a passer rating of 63.9. Tua has been objectively terrible in the playoffs, and dare I say that he's holding back this Miami offense right now. I think Tua's done a great job of developing from his rookie year when they had Brian Flores managing him to now Mike McDaniel. And I'm not ready to give up on Tua, but at a certain point when you have a big enough of a sample size to prove that a guy can't get you over the hump or win you a playoff game, you have to hit the skip button, because guys like Tyreek Hill aren't going to be around forever. Guys like Jalen Waddle won't be playing on rookie contracts. I think Miami has a major question that they need to figure out this offseason, and it's at the quarterback position. If I'm the general manager of the Miami Dolphins, I'm hitting the pass button on Tua, and I'm looking at either a quarterback in the draft or potentially signing Kirk Cousins. I think if you can steal Kirk Cousins away from the Minnesota Vikings, he would absolutely make them a very serious playoff contender. I couldn't even imagine him in this Dolphins system. If I'm the Miami Dolphins, dump Tua and go pick up Kirk Cousins. I'm Caden Kubler, and that's my take.